The list is both terrifying and enraging. This is clearly not a list of minor or trivial health problems, and for such little awareness or action to be taken on nuclear proliferation seems to me to be incomprehensible. Important point to note that might give some insight into the lack of concern over such dangers that this material proposes when escaping into the environment is the ideological standpoint that nuclear advocates almost always have here, noted by Dr. Christopher Busby. Specifically, the idea that all natural forces are controllable by mankind, the prevailing thought that by a complex processes of mathematical modelling, all processes and events can be controlled and predicted, which really reminds me of the definition of hubris as an extreme arrogance and pathological denial of one's own fallibility. We see this in so many other areas that directly or indirectly impinge on organic systems. In the past, such an attitude, while deplorable, could only have caused a limited amount of damage, but with modern technology, the damage can become so many more times amplified. In the case of nuclear, there is clearly a worldwide effect, which must be of some considerable concern to everyone, when tons and tons of radiological particles are released into the atmosphere to circle the globe, giving everyone a chronic low dose of radionuclide exposure. Therefore, it is the attitude of man's relationship in the environment that must also be evaluated, because of course it's not just nukes that harm living things, there are countless other industrial processes which do so also. And I strongly believe that part of the reason they are and continue to be used is due to the idea that mankind is somehow separate from the environment. The world around us is simply a tool to be used and thrown away when it breaks. This type of attitude may seem somewhat schizotypal to you, it certainly does to me, and I would not believe that someone could see our home, where we live, as functioning like a glorified junkyard, were it not for the constant stream of evidence in the form of industrial caused ecological catastrophes. And you can just name hundreds of them, BP and that Indian one, and so many more. Nevertheless, a great many people do see our environment as something of great beauty, wonder, and even as a living organism requiring care, love and respect. But that has been fairly recent, and industrial institutions, and particularly business, generally just have not caught up with that idea yet, except as advertising slogans, of course.
I'm afraid I'm not familiar with that term, you adorable little ragamuffin.
You never heard of recycling? It means to reuse things to conserve our natural resources.
Oh, so Mother Nature needs a favour. Well, maybe she should have thought of that when she was besetting us with droughts and floods and poison monkeys. Nature started the fight for survival, and now she wants to quit because she's losing, well, I say, hard cheese.
But nature's not our enemy.
Well, surely you agree we can do without her?
No, I don't agree.
I put that clip in there because I think it really sums up the business attitude towards the environment and ecological matters. I think also Mr. Burns has kind of quite compelling and almost I don't want to say profound, but certainly when I look at nature, sometimes it does very weird things, and it has ickiness involved in it. It doesn't do pleasant things all the time. Look at the way in which the evolution of predators happens, and disease, viruses, bacteria, stuff like that. Nature can be quite cruel. So there is almost quite a compelling argument to be hostile, and I think that plays into the conflict that the business world feels towards nature, and that's part of the ideology which business comes from. But at the same time, of course, Lisa has exactly the right point. We can't get away from nature. What nature does is us. We are part of nature, and of course, because we have this developed neocortex that can assess and evaluate what we're doing, we have that greater responsibility to look at the wider picture and to be responsible for what we do. So I'm going to play another clip as well, that really kind of looks at the problems that we have in this conflict between man and nature.
I call our product Little Lisa's patented animal slurry. It's a high-protein feed for farm animals, insulation for low-income housing, a powerful explosive, and a top-notch engine coolant. And best of all, it's made from 100% recycled animals.
I think I'm gonna be sick.
Oh, a spoonful of slurry will cure what ails ya.
Oh, you haven't changed at all. You're still evil, and when you're trying to be good, you're even more evil.
I don't understand. Pigs need food, engines need coolant, dynamiters need dynamite. I'm supplying it to them at a tidy profit, and not a single sea creature was wasted. You inspired it all, little Lisa.
But you told us to recycle.
You convinced us it was good.
No, it's evil. Please stop recycling.
Stop! You can't mix plastic with paper.
So again, here I think the clip really highlights the sort of conflict that we have. Well, not just the conflict. It's Mr. Burns' attitude to recycling that is kind of the point here. He's taken upon the mechanisms of recycling and the business acumen of recycling. Yeah, he hasn't taken on the spirit of recycling, which is that it's there to help protect the environment, to cause less damage to the environment. Yet to him it seems incomprehensible, because his idea is that the environment is there for his and everyone else's own benefit, no matter what. You can take whatever you want and do so at making a tidy profit. Also, I kept the last bit in as well. When you see the consequences of what, you know, Lisa's good intentions had resulted in, which was these kind of brain-dead zombies that were recycling for Mr. Burns, which was adding more trouble onto what should have been help. And this I find quite interesting indeed, that you can have this kind of dichotomy when you're dealing with institutions, organisations, ideologies that simply won't accept the spirit of what's being done. So the letter of the law can be performed, yet the spirit is entirely violated. And this again is another problem that we face in dealing with all these ecological problems, that you can have laws, you can have mechanisms that supposedly protect the environment, but at the same time, if you have persons that don't accept the spirit of that, then you still result in causing the same damage that you were trying to prevent in the first place. So yeah, it's a very poignant point, I think. Professor Noam Chomsky notes that degradation of the environment and pollution of the environment is not taken into account when planning business transactions. Companies are driven to try to destroy the species and the environment by the current system, making it kind of hard to blame the CEO of ExxonMobil for trying to destroy the planet, because it is a legal responsibility to do so if it increases profits. Chomsky here is of course referring to the legal imperative for corporations to maximise profits under the existing institutional structures. All of which is extremely worrying when considering the possibility of removing the use of such technologies due to the detrimental health effects. Many of the health concerns are very grave indeed. The list of diseases that can be caused by ionising radiation exposure is simply huge, and I've only covered a few of them. And the horrors just do not stop there because of the genetic damage, most particularly the damage to the reproductive system. Again, this is far beyond what most people seem to have realised, but it is perhaps the most dangerous aspect of radiation exposure for the species at large. Iain Fairlie notes some new studies showing the genetic exposure to radiation can cause genetic instability many generations into the future, meaning once the world population receives a sufficiently high enough dose of radiation, sterility and mutants will be all that the human population can produce, and we find ourselves in a children of men scenario where the fate of the species rests with one pair of reproductively normal individuals. In fact, that's pathetic film is ridiculous anyway. Even if that was the case, presumably there would still be a significant amount of radiation in the environment to that point. So even if you did get reproductively normal individuals, they'd eventually succumb to genetic damage, and that of course is passed down from generation to generation. I mean, even if you could get to the point where no radiation was present at all anymore, the fact that the genetics has already been harmed means that it gets passed down through the generations, so additional damage is not necessary to cause problems for future generations. But yeah, we'll leave that for the time being. So truth, misinformation and justice. The fact that ionised radiation can cause harm to organic systems is still contested to some extent, in the same way the causal connection with cigarette smoking and cancer is still occasionally contested. One might wonder why. Well, it is a fact that philosophically causation and causal connections are very difficult to truly define and isolate. This is just the nature of the universe. Reality is a complex interplay of many events all happening at the same time, and even with fancy measuring devices it can be extremely difficult to get exact and true data because of all the background noise inherent in the system. Incidentally, I mean, noise is kind of like a scientific term, which again kind of this noise could be really beautiful things. It could be smiles on children's faces, it could be a kind gesture, all that kind of stuff. That's what's counted as noise, because science has to be reducing everything to one particular set of this then that. But anyway, yeah, the difficulty of identifying accurately a single causal pathway in the vast array of possibilities. One can of course study events in controlled laboratory conditions, which give a much clearer picture of cause and effect. But of course people do not live in laboratories all the time. Well, normal people don't. And one is therefore forced to extrapolate out of the real environment. One is forced to extrapolate from the laboratory out into the real environment, which has all this measurement noise. And this obviously will seriously reduce the confidence one has in predictive accuracy. Radiation damage is again truly terrifying in this regard, because to begin with, it is not detectable by our senses. So without a measuring instrument, it is impossible to tell if exposure has taken place and to what level. The second problem is, except where very high levels of radiation exposures is present, it is not immediately noticeable or fatal. Third, supposing a disease is contracted, cancer for example, this can be caused by many other kinds of toxic exposure,